Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about the crime dramas that I like. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Castle and Blind Spot. Now, in this episode of, we have a boy. He's actually a NYPD recruit named Daniel who got killed. And he wasn't just, shot. Someone actually took the time to dig the bullet out of him, which is kind of like, that's pretty messed up. Beckett, Esposito, and Ryan end up investigating, the recruitment center, and they ended up finding out the person who had killed him is actually someone from that particular recruitment center. Specifically, it had to be someone from his company, the class that he's a part of, because the only people that he was killed by a gun that only their class would have access to. And so basically, Kate takes over as as an instructor, kind of to learn about, trying to find out who killed him. Because it's a very interesting concept, because it's like, Beckett actually brings it up herself. It's like these people are being trained to think like officers. They know how officers investigate crime scenes, hence why the bullet was removed from Daniel's body, as well as how to deal with interrogations to a certain extent. So they kind of know the NYPD playbook, making it so that they could possibly get away with the perfect murder, quote unquote. You end up finding out that possibly Daniel is actually a mole implanted by a Irish mobster named Jack Flanagan. But that's not necessarily the case, because obviously Kate looks into it a little more and finds out that actually that there's a pretty distinguished recruit who tries her best tries her hardest amongst everyone. She's kind of not, a lot of people in it, the recruitment don't necessarily like her. It turns out she's actually Flanagan's daughter, that he, granted Decker, she doesn't look at it like that. She's like, he got my mom pregnant. That's it. That doesn't make him a father. So basically, the reason why she wants to be a cop so badly is to take him down. She despises her dad so much because he's gotten away for 20 years because the cops have never been able to actually take him down. He came to her when he found out that, Jack Flanagan came to Decker when he found out that she was trying to become a cop because he wanted her to be his mole, but she said no. She turned him down. And she kind of confided all this in Daniel because Daniel was her boyfriend. And, Daniel actually went to Flanagan. He was like, I'll handle this. He basically took her place just because he loves her. And it's so interesting how that played out, because this acted as a parallel to the whole Castle and Beckett situation, because Castle finally told Beckett the truth about the whole what he found out in LA. It took her a little while to register it, and she even said the line of we always end up doing this. You lied to protect me and I lied to protect you. And it was kind of it's always interesting how a lot of times in the episodes the case obviously has a parallel to something that's connected to Castle and Beckett. In this particular case, it's their relationship. Daniel went out of his way protecting Decker, just like the way Castle and Beckett end up, protecting each other by not telling each other everything. And that was kind of sweet. You have Haley in her trying her best. She's like, Castle, you have to tell Beckett the truth. You don't sit around here doing nothing about, when he actually does tell her the truth and they really don't really talk about it. Haley's like, you need to talk to her. Don't just sit around here doing nothing. But anyway, you have Decker at one point, kind of going undercover. She's wearing a wire and she goes to talk to her dad, trying to get him to confess about Daniel's murder. She pulls a gun out on him and she wanted to kill him, especially because she wasn't, because of the man he is. And, and probably in her mind, she's like, it's the best way to deal with him. There's no guarantee we'll be able to take NYPD will ever be able to take him down. Easiest thing would be for me to kill him, but Beckett, stops her. And it's right here in my head, so I'm gonna go ahead and say it. There was a line that Beckett said to Flanagan that I really liked. It was basically it's always the cocky ones that think they're going to get away with everything, but they're so cocky they don't realize the match is about to fall out of their pocket. Basically, the evidence, essentially a metaphor for the evidence against them, and then I'm gonna be there to pick up that match and burn you. I was like, ooh, I like that line a lot. Anyway, getting back to things, you end up finding out that the one responsible wasn't actually Flanagan. It was actually the guy who runs the recruitment center. Because it looks like it was actually Beckett's, the guy the instructor who taught Beckett, who she is, like kind of her teacher. But it ends up being like, obviously you find out that it's the guy who leads the recruitment center. The reason why he killed Daniel is because when Daniel was stealing information for Flanagan, he ended up coming across something on that guy's computer, and it ends up finding out he's been, taking money. And he wanted to hide that. That's why he killed Daniel. And I really like that whole scene. Basically, him and Beckett are kind of in a little bit of a shootout. He turns off the light. It's in that training room that you saw earlier in the episode where they're popping up, those cutouts, for training. And, he's wearing night vision goggles, but, Beckett does her thing and ends up knocking him out. I thought it was a pretty, interesting, scene. And at the very end, we have Castle and Beckett coming together. They're like, we can't go on the way we are, and they decide that they're going to handle this lock set situation by working together. And then also basically ends with her making out with him. So they're probably quote unquote officially back together. I will be interested to see whether they come out as yeah, don't worry guys, me and Beckett were together, and kind of finally explain everything to Esposito and Ryan. Yeah, we were faking. We got back together a little while back because I found out the truth, and Beckett, told me everything too. So, the show is going on another break. It literally just came back from a week break, and so it's coming back April 4th, which is really? Why are you doing that? But whatever. That's just how it is. Now moving on to this week's episode of Blind Spot, we have Jane kind of deciding that she's not going to come in today because just everything is just a little too much for her, and she just needs space, from the FBI, especially kind of what happened last episode when she, killed Jonas. And she ends up talking about it later on in that, her therapy session with that guy who helps her, try and, deal with everything. That she basically talked about the fact is how everyone doubted her. She could see it in Mayfair's eyes, Tasha's, as well as Reed's, that when it was believed that she was the mole, they believed it. Which is kind of sweet. The only person that didn't believe it was Kurt. Sadly, we have Tasha being having a federal prosecutor talk to her. Basically, he knows the entire situation about her gambling debt, her whole situation with the CIA guy, the guy that went missing. Basically, he wants to use Tasha as a way of finding out why Tom was so interested in Jane and what this all has to do with Mayfair. We know it's that whole operation, Mayfair and Tom's connection being that operation that they were a part of, that basically spied on the U.S. people. And that Jane is somehow connected because she is connected to that whole thing somehow. It's kind of sad. Tasha finds herself in that situation again of being manipulated, being someone else's pawn. First it was Tom, now this guy. In this week's episode, some tattoos of Jane's lead the group to a certain point. It was basically 2 points on a map, and they needed to basically find the third point. And the reason why Patterson was able to figure this out, because Patterson got an email from somebody, telling her, about this whole situation. You end up finding out later on in the episode, and you kind of infer this yourself, because even Jane does, but she ends up confirming it near the end of the episode. That's the group that she was working with. They, sent that anonymous email to her, Patterson, because Jane said she wasn't going to help them on that project, the next mission that they needed to accomplish, because the guy that talks to Jane was like, it is time sensitive. They end up going there and end up, messing up an NYPD sting. They were there was a sting on a drug house They were trying to get all, some of the heavy hitters, but the Kurt and his team kind of showed up and kind of ruined that. But they find out it wasn't a house that they were supposed to notice. It was a mural to a girl that had died. Basically, she was a musician girl that had died. Apparently, she was brutally murdered by her boyfriend. But it was like a very solid case against him. And he's currently, like, today is the day that he's about to get executed. But you turn out he's actually not the killer. It's actually, he was just set up in that situation. And for the longest time, he always said he was not guilty. But, more recently, especially, prior to now, he went to a group that, prove his innocence. But they were working together with him until he told them, like, no, never forget it, I am guilty. And even Kurt and Tasha went to visit him, and he was like, no, I'm guilty, so just leave me alone, just let me die. The reason being is because his family was threatened. So they have to find the true killers behind it. And because the whole situation ends up being a human trafficking situation. Basically, some cops, some law enforcement officers, I think they deal with illegal immigrants. I think the group is called ICE. They deal with immigration, I think. Basically, one of its officers, it's on the, like, one or two of its officers, like an arresting officer, and I think like the bus driver are working with someone. Basically, they're selling the women to be sold off. Tasha goes undercover to infiltrate it. Things kind of don't go their way because they end up losing track of her. And she ends up at the house where it's just like, you find out like the deplorable crap that happens to people there. It's just like, it breaks your heart because of the one girl that was talking to Tasha. She had talked about the fact is that the guy that, the reason why she's not upstairs is because she was beaten, like she had marks on her back and she had a bruise on her face. Like he had, like, I think the head honcho guy that was in charge there basically did that to her because he's kind of one of the clients there. Like, I mean, he takes an interest in the girls too, I think. And he has a bit of a temper and he beat her. It's just like that piece of crap. He ends up later on in the episode, like he ends up trying to burn down the house with all of them in there just so that he can, remove any evidence. Luckily, Tasha was able to get everyone out of the house in time. Granted, she got stuck in there, but Kurt and Reed showed up and handled the situation and were able to save her in time. And, with testimony from the lady, because it was very interesting because one of the ladies that like helped them is actually a former person that was human, like who was, she was trafficked as well. She was kind of bred to be that guy's special girl that she started doing work for him because she's the one that I'd actually completely forgotten about it because at the beginning of the episode we saw the woman that had died and her boyfriend was being blamed for her death. The woman that the tattoos led to. Basically, at the beginning of the episode, you saw her body being dragged away, and I kind of forgot about that. This lady, the lady who did that, because she was actually one herself, kind of that Stockholm Syndrome situation. Like, you have to help out with the people that kept you captive. And, she felt so bad about it because that woman was her friend, and she ends up, telling them, like, yeah, it was him who raped and killed her. And, the FBI takes that as a win because they're like, we're going to, do this as an opportunity. We're going to, they take down everyone, they took down the killer as well as everyone. They're going to be aiming for everyone that's a part of that client list. And we have an interesting conversation between Tasha and Jane because Jane wanted to quit the FBI because she was obviously just tired of everything, but she doesn't let on because she talks about that during her therapy session, but like the guy's like, I'm not going to let you just walk away without, because I can tell that you're hiding something. You've been hiding something for a while, but Jane doesn't want to, she can't tell. But she has a very interesting conversation with Tasha because it's basically like that this wouldn't be possible without those tattoos. They do some good because Jane was kind of reluctant about these whole tattoos because, the whole situation being as it is, that she's just a mole in the FBI and that she's lying to all these people that she actually does care about, and that this whole thing was her own idea. But basically, she goes to the guy that she's been talking to this entire time. And like I said earlier, he's the one, he confirms that it was them who led the FBI to that case because it was time sensitive because her boyfriend was going to be executed. Which, now that evidence had, now that the real killer has been found, he was, his execution was stayed and he will be possibly, released soon. So. But Jane tells him that she's not going to work with him anymore, that she considers herself an FBI agent. She is a part of the FBI. She's not going to betray them anymore. And he's like, you're not part of them. This is all your plan. She's like, I don't care. She's like, I don't trust you. And I don't trust that woman. Like, obviously who she was. She's like, whoever I was, it doesn't matter. All that matters is who I am now. And basically he says, like, the people we work with are very powerful. And they'll want all of this done. They'll do whatever it takes to get all this stuff done. That even means killing the people that are important to you. So basically, if you don't do what you're told, they will have Kurt killed. Which is kind of sad. And we have Kurt hooking up with that Marshall girl now that I'm thinking about it. And it's like the Marshall lady, who is, I think the actress' name is Tristy Kelly Dunn. She plays Siobhan on Banshee. Oh, anytime I see her, it kind of breaks my heart because I just think about the fact is she's no longer on Banshee. It's like, I'm not going to spoil that for anyone that doesn't know what happens up there, but I will say it's depressing. But anyway, I was like, I want you and Jane to be together. Just don't. It's like, I don't care about you. I want you and Jane together, Taylor. But that's just that. So, with Kurt's life on the line, she isn't going to have any choice but to work with them. And I did completely forgot about the story element where Reed, and Mayfair, still looking into the whole Tom situation as well as Jane. Reed went off to look at some surveillance cameras and he saw Tom's car, but it wasn't Tom driving it. It was the guy, the guy that Jane's been talking to, the one who actually killed Tom. And it's like, who the hell is this guy? I think he's texting the information, texting that he found something to Mayfair, but when he's about to go to his car, he gets knocked out. Part of me's thinking like, okay, so it's got to be the group that Jane's a part of doing that. It's too well timed because they probably found out that, Reed was looking into the whole Tom situation, so they're trying to cover their tracks. So it's like that or it's someone else completely. So we won't know till the next episode. So. But that's really all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.